Hi, good afternoon. Kristen Collins here today with my beautiful and amazing stepdaughter, Meghan Michelle Collins. Hi, Megs.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me today, um, especially during this COVID crisis. You are our first human outside of David and I to be together, and we welcome you home from Charleston.
A live guest in action.
That is very much so. So, thanks for taking about a half hour of your vacation to connect with me. What I've been doing is in this crisis, I've been very reflective of my journey. And as I've been trying to articulate my feelings about where I am when it comes to well being and health and self love, I've been finding it challenging because I'm so down a lane. And I just, my thoughts are so deep. And then when I talk to people, often I'm not really connecting at a level that I can articulate. So what I've done is I've asked some people who have been pivotal on my journey of 53 years to connect for about a half hour. And we reflect just on some of those pivotal moments and the whys that has brought me to 53 years. So why I've asked you to join me today.
Yes, and it's such an honor to be a part of your journey and to just watch you blossom and over the years continue to grow and choose to grow. For me, that's been amazing to witness as a family member. But, I do think being able to reflect on it is huge because I think that's what pivots us into the next growth, into the next chapter. And so the fact that you're recognizing the need for self-reflection is huge.
Well, thank you, coming from my licensed clinical social worker. And this is a healing exercise for me. It's also an opportunity to express gratitude. Some of the people that I'm selecting, I've actually never physically met.
Right.
I've crossed with them, and some like you have been in it the longest with me. So it's really cool for me. I'd love to start just by honoring that I met you when you were 5 years old. And even back then, with your big head of hair and your little freckly face,
Still there.
You were just such an apparent old soul. And you were always wise beyond your years, even at 5 years old, to the point so much that something would come out of your mouth. And I'm like, how does she know that? Like, I just figured that out 2 weeks ago. So how has it been for you? Growing up and blossoming as someone who is so wise and maybe not always on the same trajectory as your peers?
It's interesting. I think it's super important to find your people. And at a young age, I had to really decide who those people were for me. Especially as a high school student, I think there's social pressures throughout your entire life. I think the people that you surround yourself with are a large part of who you are or who you become. But I think a pivotal point for me was in high school and in choosing family and choosing quality time with my family, and then really choosing friendships that were more not as it wasn't about the quantity, the amount of friends. It was really about those relationships and the quality of them. And even to this day, I think who you choose to spend your energy and your time and your heart with is a large part of how you then choose to take that time for yourself.
Sure, absolutely. Which also then triggers for me another chapter, many chapters actually, in your growing. And it was always challenging for your dad and I when you would be faced with obstacles. You were one of those kids that you worked hard and often had adversity cross your path. And as a parent, you want to sweep in and fix everything and take care of it all. And we did not. We really witnessed you having to overcome some major, setbacks and hardships as you grew. So can you reflect on that and any lessons taken from that?
It's a part of life and resiliency, and I think everybody probably learns it at a different point in their life. I learned it young. I kind of had to. I chose to, I guess. And I think that resiliency for me has really, first and foremost, brought me to my career as a licensed clinical social worker and being able to understand or support somebody who is being vulnerable with me in a time of choosing to be resilient and being able to look at them and say truthfully, yes, you're choosing to be resilient through this, and I understand to an extent what that would feel like. And so I think it's also given me the confidence to always continue trying. It's made me a very hard worker, very determined, very motivated, that when I set my sights on something, that even when I have setbacks or some curveball comes in the middle of the game that I didn't predict, that I know that I've had other experiences that I've been resilient through them, and I've chosen to continue trying or continue working towards that goal, accomplishing that dream. And so knowing that I've done it before makes me confident that I can do it again, and that I'll be able to get through the next chapter, or to curve to what maybe my path is destined to be. Maybe it wasn't the original dream or goal that I thought of, but being resilient and knowing that it's all happening for a reason, and just to keep moving forward.
And that is it's a lesson I learned from growing with you, and it's a lesson that now it's one I talk on all the time. Having focus and being excited about a destination, or a pathway that we think is the right one, and then getting thrown that curveball. And there were a lot of times where you were thrown a curveball, and we went through the process of experiencing the disappointment. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it doesn't take very long often for something else to manifest or blossom, and you're like, oh, thank goodness, I'm not stuck in this pathway that I thought was the end all, and in all actuality, this has worked much better.
And I think another piece of that is having gratitude for when you've climbed this mountain, you've worked really hard, you've been resilient through it, and you get to the top, and you see the view for the first time, and you see how hard you've worked, and you've known that you made it happen. And that regardless of the obstacles or the curveballs, you're there for the view. And so having gratitude for that moment, and for the people that helped get you there, who supported you through the difficult times and continue to encourage and support you through it, I think that's a huge part of really being there for that moment, being present for it, and having gratitude for not only your own self-determination, but for the people that helped you carry on.
I have chills everywhere. My head is so in Las Vegas right now, and you were, I don't know, 9-ish, with blisters on your feet from wearing a pair of shoes that were too small for you, but I didn't know that I packed for you. And we went to the M&M store there on the Strip, and they had that rock climbing wall that was, I don't know, 5 stories or something very tall. And your brother, who's 2 years older than you and uber athletic, is like, I'm going to go climb that rock climbing wall. And we were like, yeah, sure. And it was not cheap. It was like, kind of like, okay, sure. Let me go ahead and give you my credit card so my kid can climb the wall. So Brendan, goes over, is all strapped up and is going for it. And you come over and, not equipped, not dressed for the occasion.
Sure not.
And you're like, I would like to climb the wall too. And your dad's like, of course, absolutely. And I go, no. No. We are not spending that chunk of money on our cute daughter who's not equipped, not capable, not going to do it. And David looked at me and said, no, if my daughter wants to try to climb the wall, she can try to climb the wall. I don't care if she doesn't get a foot off the ground. So I was quiet because I am a step parent. And I literally spent about the next 45 minutes watching you in inappropriate attire. Like you had the wrong shoes on. I don't even know if you had socks on.
Probably didn't have a hair tie.
You definitely didn't have a hair tie. But you climbed the wall. Yeah. And when you got to the top, you rang that darn bell.
I remember it.
And it was such a lesson for me where I was like, who am I to judge her journey? Um, Providing, and I think it's a balance of, you want to protect, you want to be realistic, you don't want your kid getting hurt, you don't want them being disappointed, but then you're also robbing them of the opportunity to actually grow through something. And I came obviously very close to robbing you from the opportunity to prove to yourself and to the world that you were capable of doing that. That was a huge lesson for me.
And it's so interesting to hear your perspective on it, only because as a child, I remember that story. I remember ringing that bell, and I remember looking down and seeing all these people watching that moment with, being in that moment with me. And as I've gotten older, it's one of those chapters in my book, in my life, in my journey it's one of the first that I go back to, because it really was a realization for me that if you set your mind to something, then you have great opportunity to achieve it. And I think of that moment often. It's, last year I took a big leap of faith and moved to Charleston knowing one single person. And I reflected on that moment a lot through my transition, and just knowing as a small child that I believed in myself. And that's everything. Believing in yourself, especially in the beginning of a transition or an opportunity or a decision, is listening to your heart and trusting your gut through it.
And regardless of outcome, right?
Right.
So worst case scenario, you didn't make it one step up, or you made it 10 steps up. And that's been a lesson I've been learning and continue to learn, that it's like, this is my goal. I think it's a great idea. I'm going to go for it regardless of outcome. I'm going to give it everything I have. And regardless of the hurdles, being like your stepmom going no. And then, your father being smart enough to be like, yes, my daughter can do anything she wants. But I think also, too, what was so cool was the amount of people who stopped what they were doing and watched you for a bit. Like, we were all standing there, and I'm like, please don't fall, please don't fall. And just watching, they were rooting you on. And I mean, like, the place erupted when you rang the bell. And it was just, I mean, I think I learned as much, if not more than you. And that's been part of the grace of being a part of the Collins family, has been, I have chosen to try to be the best I can be, which wasn't always an easy decision. I might default differently, but I felt this awesome responsibility with you and your brother to try at least to be the best human I could be, especially when I'm hanging out with such an old soul. So you referenced impacts in your upbringing, in your childhood, that led you to choose the career that you chose. Since you were very, very small, you were on a path and a trajectory to do the exact work that you're doing now. And there were times that I was not jealous in a negative way, but I was definitely envious with your clarity. I'm like, how does she know at such a small age what it is that she thinks she wants to do? And then not only did you think you wanted to do it, but you rocked out your education in record time and made all this happen by the time you were 24 years old. Can you reflect on, how you had such clarity of your life's purpose?
I think at a young age, I had the opportunity to be very self-aware. And for me in my career and in my profession, the opportunity to be a support to somebody else, especially in a time of hardship or transition, is such an honor for me. I feel so privileged to be somebody who gets to be a part of their journey. And even as a young child, being that person in friendships, or always being the person that somebody wanted to talk to something about, it was just a natural conversation for me. And I remember sitting in the back seat of your car, and I was actually, as a small child, leaving one of my first therapy sessions, and I was asking you all these questions about what that person did and how they got there, and I was so interested in it. I even wrote a book in 7th grade about this is what I wanted to do with my life, and so I think the clarity, I'm very grateful for it, because I don't think it's very common. not in a prideful way, but I think um, a lot of the time we have to try different things before we really find our niche. And I think just being so self-aware of my own emotions and how I could help support people realize the importance of their emotions and then what to do with them was was huge. And again, just I mean, the fulfillment for me of being that person for somebody else has always been incredibly special. And so to do that for my career and to do that for a profession and for a livelihood is amazing.
It is amazing. And it has been amazing to watch. And I remember that day in the car and you in the back seat with all your hair and the most profound things coming from your mouth. And I'm trying not to drive off the road because I'm just in awe. I'm like, how does she know this? And it has been really beautiful. It also took my undergrad is in education, secondary education, and it was very much embedded in my head that your role as a teacher is not to be the student's friend, right? You are there to be their teacher, and it gets hard because you care about the kid and you do want them to like you and whatnot. So one of the ways that when I met you and your brother at 5 and 7 years old, I was really trying to have a clear boundary for myself and for you guys. Like, I'm your dad's girlfriend, I'm your dad's fiance, I'm your dad's wife. You have a beautiful mom. I'm not here to disrupt or try to take over. And I'm definitely not here to be your friend, right?
Yes. Yes.
And yet, I so enjoy your company and I enjoy your brother's company. So it was really hard to maintain that little bit of a cushion to make sure that I was being fair to myself and fair to you and fair to our family and fair to my marriage. And I will never forget, you and I have been traveling together. We've traveled as a family since you were 5, but you and I are travel buddies.
Yes.
If I get to pick one person to go somewhere with, it's you. And one of my proudest moments is how well you enjoy taking in new experiences and how versatile you are and resilient you are. But you and I were heading up to the Northeast to go see my family, and we were on the plane, and we were just having this incredibly deep conversation about something profound. And that's really the space I like to hang out in. Like, I could talk about, shoes, and I could talk about food. I could talk about real world stuff, but my happy place is when I get to have sparks in my head pop because I'm being stimulated intellectually by someone, and you've been doing that to me since you were 5. And I'll never forget being on the plane with you and just, you were like 13, 14, 15. I don't know exactly, but I remember like putting my shoulders down and exhaling and saying to myself, you know what, Kristen, it's okay that you really like her. And it's okay that she is also your friend and you can let that guard down and maintain that healthy boundary. But you've been that type of an inspiration to me since I met you.
I think that's key, the word boundary, though. I think, there's a need for healthy boundaries when you're young and, you have to wear many different hats, I'm sure, as a mom. But then, coming into my later teen years and then absolutely becoming an adult, just how that relationship has formed into not only a friendship, but I so admire and respect you that you've been a mentor for me for a very long time, since I can remember. But watching a friendship evolve through that as well is very special.
Well, it's nice to have, for me, such a safe container. And even when a mistake is made, the forgiveness and the love, it's been a foundation for me to trust and release and be free. So with that being said, I would love to spend a moment or two touching on your education and your career and how, from the little that I understand and know, and as I begin to learn more on my own in separation from you, and then when I connect with you, I understand that this is foundational knowledge that you have that I'm just, learning about, example being. It was a real awakening for me when I understood for me personally that my optimum well-being, my actual health, was very much tied to my mental health and my management of trauma and stress and anxiety and the release of that and how it can embed it did embed indeed in my body. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how it was showing up for me middle age. And I was not getting clarity from outside help as to what I was physically experiencing in my health.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was digging and I'm like finding out this information, and then you're like, yeah. And so can you talk a little bit about your work in trauma and our physical health?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just as some background, I have my master's in clinical social work from Florida State University, and yes, go Knowles. And I also have my license in clinical social work. So, in the state of South Carolina, I'm a licensed independent social worker, which basically means that I can be in private practice. I can diagnose through the DSM-5 and provide clinical therapy for diagnosis. And, you know, the piece, the balance, the piece, the connection between our mental health, our physical health is so strong. And as research continues to unfold and we see more studies being done about this, it's pretty amazing to discover that it happens very quickly. So most of the time people think of trauma as specific events. And right now I'm a pediatric medical social worker at the Medical University of South Carolina. And so I see all of the traumas that come through our emergency department and then are admitted. And those traumas are often burns, motor vehicle collisions, gunshot wounds. Those are big, big traumas. But there's also traumas such as going through a divorce or losing a loved one, having a pet run away. Trauma is not, if there's not a cookie cutter for trauma, and oftentimes people don't feel that they've experienced trauma if it hasn't been one of these big, massive traumas. We call those big T traumas. And so it's almost this denying or not feeling like they need to really be in touch with those emotions. And over time, that it stays in our bodies, it stays in our hearts, it stays in our minds, and it affects not only our mental health but our physical health. And so I think this widespread myth, really, that traumas are just these big major events is key. And just being aware that even going through a breakup, going away to college for the first time, losing a friendship. I mean, those are huge emotional experiences for us as humans, and we feel that. We feel it in our bodies. So then to not take hold of those emotions and to be present with them and to recognize I am sad, or I am so angry, or I am really annoyed, and to just keep those emotions within us, and then to just build on top of those. Our bodies feel the wear and tear of that. The connection, as I said, it happens so quickly that it's so important when you recognize that you're not your best self, or that you would like the opportunity to be supported by someone for those feelings. That's the key part. It's not when you need to go talk to somebody, it's when you want to. And I think to that point, when you need somebody, it's because you're usually, every time in therapy, what we always say is that the first time you meet a client or a patient who's choosing to come to therapy, it's probably because they have just hit rock bottom.
Sure.
And they don't know what else to do. And so I always, especially with traumas, I always recommend just getting into that early on and just start building that relationship and those conversations so that you can really be present with those emotions as you feel them. And that way it doesn't later on, affect your physical health in a way that can be very damaging.
I appreciate that lens, and especially right now with what the globe is going through with this pandemic. And often you hear somebody's upset about something, and then they say, but so many people have it so much worse than me. And that is true, probably for, anyone that I would be connecting with, that there's always going to be an example of someone who has it worse, but that does not discount what you are indeed going through.
Right. And we all feel things differently. I mean, I could have the same experience as you and feel completely different about it. It could completely wreck my world, where you could, naturally be very resilient to it. Our threshold for different situations is different. And so comparing ourselves to somebody else's experience is a complete discredit to ourselves.
Totally unfair.
Totally unfair.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think part of the dialogues that I'm looking to host or be a part of is that authentic space where we can own whatever it is that we are feeling, in not live in denial of, right? Not living in the past, or not fretting about the future, or not stuffing the emotion, or being superwoman and deflecting the emotion. And it's actually to be like, that is so interesting. This is how I feel right now. And then feel it, and then, let it go. And I know the past couple of years for me have been very interesting, introspective, just like this big excavation going on. And you've been around for quite a bit of that, and, have had to experience that. And the vulnerability of me being able to say to you and, our family, this is just where I'm at right now. I don't like it. I wish I was jovial and fun and, happy, pleasant to be around. But I had to honor that and just sit in the sludge. And now that I'm hopefully have excavated that and I'm stepping forward, it's like the vulnerability. And I don't know that I love that word, because I don't feel that I'm being vulnerable by sharing that. I just think I'm just sharing it because it's just the truth.
Right.
So I want to be able to be a part of a community or a dialogue where others can just own whatever their reality is in the given moment without judgment, and to be embraced for who they are at that moment, and hopefully help everyone heal and feel good about themselves and move forward.
No, I think that's so important. And it's interesting as you reflect on your experience through that time, because watching you in those moments, there were still happy, joyful, grateful moments. It wasn't just one feeling the entire time. There were ebbs and flows of it, just as we all feel. And I think it's also important to remember that even coming out of that and into a new chapter, you're still going to have moments of having those emotions, or feeling in a dark place, or feeling upset or sad or mad or distant. You're still going to have you're still going to have those experiences. And so being in a community where you are embraced and supported in each chapter is huge, because it reminds you of your love and support from the past, present, and future, and just recognizing that even in letting go of those past emotions and growing and blossoming and coming through them, that it's still okay to feel them when they come.
Absolutely. And as I begin a new chapter, it is a little bit, it's like kind of, I'm a little sore. It's like, I remember, yeah, I remember that. And I'm like, oh no, like, don't know. But with passing of more time, inclusive, it's more like, no, it's okay. Right now does suck. Right now is
going to have a sucky day.
Today's not good, and that's okay. And I'm finding that I'm able to move through things much more fluidly and rapidly. And I'm also finding, I really encourage people to connect. I remember not wanting to connect because I'm like, I have nothing positive to add here.
Or no energy, maybe, to even, right.
I don't want to suck the energy out of whatever. And I've heard other people share that. Like, I didn't hop on that Zoom call, or I didn't, participate because I wasn't in a good headspace. And I respect that. It doesn't mean every time you just come, dashing in like, hey, I'm miserable. Like, of course. But at the same time, when you have that safe community, be it your stepdaughter or be it, a larger group, being that authentic, because possibly what's going to happen is someone else is going to own up that they're,
Right.
in a similar place or have had a similar experience. And it gives us all kind of like permission to be
Mhm.
able to be real
Mhm.
instead of, if we were all the same and we were all happy all the time, this would be the most boring place in the galaxy.
We wouldn't grow.
That's so
I
true.
mean, I was doing a poetry workshop on. I chose vulnerability, so
Mm.
everybody in this workshop chose a topic that they've not struggled with, but maybe they've grown through and blossomed through. And so I chose vulnerability to be my word or topic, and um, I think that's such a big part of it is it's feeling it's feeling the vulnerability and um, letting it be a part of your journey.
Yeah, and I think, I hear words like vulnerability, authenticity, courage, and they're all beautiful words. And it makes me ponder and a little bit sad that to be authentic, to just be you and embrace who you are, who's absolutely different from anyone else that is breathing, that we shy away from that at times for acceptance. And it's not that I want to be like out there, out front, being crazily different. That's not it. But I want to be comfortable in who I am,
Mm-hmm.
what I believe in, how I treat myself, how I treat
Mm-hmm.
others. And if somebody else isn't in alignment with that, that's okay too. Everybody's entitled to their own journey.
Right, and just having respect for that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm hoping for coming out of this pandemic. So one last question in reference to that. I love being able to connect with you from a generational perspective,
Mm.
right? I mean, even though you're way older than me soul wise, chronologically, you're in your 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So you represent a whole different genre, and your decision making, as was your brother's and a lot of your peers, how you choose to spend your time, what you choose to purchase, where you choose to live, all kinds of things are based on different values than potentially the generation I grew up in, right?
Mm.
Where it's like, I'm going to take the highest paying job I can possibly get so I can buy the most stuff so I can be the happiest. And both you and your brother are showing me, that you're making decisions based on a holistic approach, quality time, balance, passion, all kinds of things. So that coupled with the fact that you packed up and to your point, you did know one person in Charleston, but not even that close.
Right.
It wasn't like it was your bestie or something like that. You chose Charleston because it spoke to you. The minute you got there, you were like, I need to spend some time here. Can you speak a little bit about, what it means to you in your life choices, your decisions for your present and your future, what your lens is for the decisions that you're making?
I think going back to your point earlier of facing adversity and being resilient through different challenges, I have chosen to really follow my own joy. And, even a couple, I was more than months ago now, but I had this dream of just going to Paris because Paris simply just makes me very happy. In old journal entries, I would write that my heart is singing in Paris because I just felt so free and so joyful there. And so you were part of my trip there, even though it was short lived, just to make a decision based off of that simply and just finding the joy. And Charleston for me, everybody asks, why did you move to Charleston? And I've found that most people move, you're either moving for a person, you're moving for a job, or you're moving simply for the place. And I was moving for the place. And Charleston to me was an opportunity to find the joy on my own and for it to be mine, to really have that chapter of independence and to make it my own. And Charleston just felt, the surrounding areas of Charleston just made me feel comfortable doing that, and the beauty of it. So I think for me personally, finding the decisions that I've made, it's a lot about finding the joy in them. I remember having a conversation with Dad about my next career choice, a couple years ago, and he looked at me and said, "You, I'm not going to let you make a decision until you find something that truly is going to bring you joy in a position where you wake up every day that you're excited to do." And it's about chasing the joy. So in relationships, in places, in vacations, in where you live, how you spend your money, how you spend your time, and especially coming out of this global pandemic, is it's even more precious, those decisions. And it's not about the money. It's not about the material things. It's not about any of that. It's just it's about the people and the time and the energy that you pour into them and that you pour into yourself, and looking for those moments of joy through it all. And so I think,
that.
yeah, I think, and that, I mean, I've been inspired by you for a long time about that, just finding the pursuit of happiness, but to always go back to that. And you can only make those decisions for yourself. No one else is going to make them for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think your dad taught me when I met him 21 years ago. The way he chose to spend his time with you and Bren was maybe not traditional as it was over 2 decades ago, where it was more you are now the dad that gets every other weekend and Wednesday nights or something like that. And your dad was uber hands-on. And all of every decision, I promise you, I was there for them. Every decision was based on, his relationship with you guys. And that was part of the reason I was so attracted to him, because I was like, he loves his kids and is going to make career decisions, all decisions, including being with me or not spending time with me, based on the health of the relationship with you guys. So I think we both had a really good role model with that. And while I've ebbed and flowed with that, and I've looked for the joy outside of self, I have now come full circle to realize that joy that I'm looking for is not attainable outside through material anything. It is truly being able to sit in the quiet of the present moment and be in awe and wonder, whether that's, out on the boat, whether that's in Charleston, whether that's in my office, just being able to exhale and be full of gratitude for the present moment.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't express to you how exciting it was to take some of your visit home, to connect with someone for the first time face to face. So thank you for that. And please just know how much each and every day, even when you're in Charleston, you have been so pivotal in the foundation of my journey. And I am forever grateful to share it with you.
Thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Love you.
Love you too.